Boom. All right. Welcome everyone to the final call of the Digital Economics Masters curriculum. So, I have a few things I want to go over. The first one being that this very last module, the one on email marketing, is important, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to map out those emails. It takes a lot of time to learn the automation softwares and all of that stuff. And I just want to make it very clear up front that the automations, if you have a consistent weekly newsletter, they're they're really just a bonus. You do not need them. The only things that you do need would be some kind of buyer's journey emails after someone purchases a product or service from you. So if someone purchases a service, then you need clear next steps. Of course, like what do they need to do? What do they need to uh, what information do they need to give you to accurately maybe upload them to a project management dashboard, or do they need to add you on Telegram so they can DM you? Do they need to join a Discord server? The main thing here with the buyer's journey emails is one, there's two routes that you can go and should go. One is just delivering more value, right? Over delivering. And once the product is created or the service is created, the emails are kind of just a bonus that can be added on at any time to provide more context and more value. And it just adds another dimension to the product to help nurture your buyers more, right? It's just a helpful thing to have. Um, the next thing would be just clear steps on how to actually use the course. This is something I learned the hard way where um, you'll like, especially for the community where there's so many different moving parts and people may not know where to start. And it may be very clear to you, like, oh, what do you need, what they need to do next because you built the thing. But other people, it's just not clear. And you should aim to make it as clear as possible. And that could take one, two emails, whatever you deem necessary. And then the last thing that I always recommend for a buyer's journey email um, is some kind of ask for a testimonial, right? And my favorite way to do this is with an incentive. So it can be a way of adding value as well as getting something in return. So, an example for this cohort, it's like I was creating the new course along with it. And a lot of it is crossover information, just focused on writing a newsletter and turning that into a thread and then tweets, which we talked about in bachelor's. And so it's like, yeah, of course, like give it for free in exchange for a testimonial. And so that's the main thing. And you can get creative with this, and it doesn't have to be uh, super crazy. Like, I've practiced this in the community where it's like, hey, I want you to participate in this challenge. And let's say we were doing a thread writing challenge in the community, and Joey and I, we offered, we'll retweet our favorite threads of the day every day. So there's two potential retweets that gets people involved, that gets people moving. So incentives goes far beyond just testimonials. It can go for like replying to a newsletter. It can go to uh, retweeting your thread, right? I've seen people do this when they write a thread where it's like, I'm launching a new course. If you retweet the first tweet of this thread, you'll be put into a drawing to get it for free. And I've seen some go viral, but of course it's still dependent on how well the thread performs in the first place. But it's a good way to get creative in how you can drive more traffic to your page, get testimonials, really anything. It's just a universal lesson of, if you want people to act, give them a reason to act. Uh, so that was the main thing. And then saying that the buyer's journey emails are important also dictates, I would consider the welcome sequence of your newsletter or just a welcome email. I would lump that in with buyer's journey, right? I would say that that is pretty necessary to give people an idea of what they can expect. Uh, Go through the whole reply to this email to help you increase deliverability. Um, Drag it out of spam. You know, everything I listed in that thing is something that you should include, and at least have at least one welcome email for when people sign up to your newsletter. Uh, And then you can go beyond that, which there's instructions to do so. But aside from that, those are the main things that I would deem like absolutely necessary. And then everything on top of that in terms of like a product sequence or an appointment sequence, those are all bonuses and dependent on the individual's goals and what they're trying to do. So with all of that, and since this is the last call, and since I don't really expect anyone to have like built out sequences right now, let's open up the floor. Let's talk about really anything. If you have questions on this most recent module, or just want feedback on things that you've done before, or if you have any glaring questions about literally anything brand, content, product, marketing, sales, all of that stuff. And just since we're a small group, feel free to unmute yourself whenever.
Well, thanks. First of all, thanks, Dan, Joey, for this cohort. I think it's been very well structured, and I really like the way, like all of the teachings have built up to this and built up to the offer. Um, I do have a question as it comes to at least the masters, the people that were in the masters, and how we're able to come back into the next cohorts, right? And then when I
Mm-hmm.
ask this question, while I think of another one, or somebody else thinks of another one, um, let's say, between today, which is like the last call, and the beginning of the next cohort, is the Discord server gonna stay open? Are we gonna be able to keep asking questions? Or is there a set date where, you know what, like you guys, I'll leave this open until, I don't know, September 2nd. And then from then it'll be open again until October. And only the masters ones are going to be re-included in that one. Or how is that going to work?
Yeah. So, in terms of the Discord, I I talk about iteration a lot, and this is a time where I'm going to have to iterate because I screwed up the automations when putting people into the Discord. So this is like I don't really have to say this, but the main thing is it'll be open until like forever for you guys. So everyone in Masters will have access to the Discord like perpetually. So you can ask questions at any time, whether it be like downtime between cohorts or whatever it may be. And then when the next cohort starts, you guys will also receive those emails when one, when it starts, and two, um, when the certain things are added, and you'll also get the announcements in the Discord for like when the calls are and other things like that. So you can go in and schedule those because with Masters, it's like you have access to this for life, or I guess as long as it remains like a structured cohort with calls and stuff. But either way, you have access to it for life. So the next cohort is going to be mid October ish. Don't have an exact date, but then the calls are going to change a bit where it's going to be like first week is there's kind of like you go through and um the first week is like just an off week where you're going through you're reading through the first thing, and then the first call will be a brand workshop since like uh the first week of bachelor's is about branding, and then the second week or the next call would be content, and then the third week would be a Q&A call, and then that would be like the transition into masters, and then a week off, and then a marketing call or workshop, and then a product workshop, and then a Q&A. And so we'll test that version out. To answer your question, Samantha, yes. So lifetime, you'll be able to join next cohorts perpetually. That was included in masters. I know you went over from the actual mastery program, um, but yes, the masters tier gets access to all of them, any calls, forever. And in the case of Discord, for just this time, you guys can ask questions whenever, like forever. And I'll probably keep this round of bachelors in just as a bonus for like being founders, and one because I have no way of taking them out individually because they aren't tagged as bachelors. So they'll have access to, and they're good people. Like I know some of you have built relationships with them, so it'd be cool to have like that, like founders alumni just in there. And who knows, maybe like you guys can be part of future cohorts and like join in and how do I put it? Like we could host you guys or something. You guys could teach and have potential to like work with people that are coming into the future cohorts. So I think that would just be cool all around, even though it was a blunder on my part. But blessing in disguise. So does that answer the question? Pretty much you get access to everything forever.
Okay. Yes, it does. But also the other one is if we ask questions in the Discord, like, are we still gonna like I don't know. I'm not. I mean, I'm not asking like, hey guys, are you gonna be active every single day like you were during the cohort? But asking if if we were to ask questions, if you're still gonna be answering them like every now and then or something. Because a lot of the things I really like the cohort and I think I learned a lot, but I'm a little bit behind with some of the things. So maybe something that if I had been on par, I could have asked today, I'm not gonna know up until 2, 3, 4 weeks from now.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So the way this is what kind of screwed up the Discord automation in the first place is that I the cohort channels are also in the same server. It's the Modern Mastery server. So it's in the same as the community. It's just different levels of access. So Joey and I go through there every day anyways. So yeah, we'll be in there every day answering questions for all channels that are in that server.
So
Awesome.
Dan,
Thank you very much.
No
so
problem.
Dan and Joey, I'm behind you on getting my all my stuff together. I'm kind of reverse engineering. I'm not doing it the exact method you have, of course. So once I get my website up, and then when I get my main page up, when I incorporate some of those things, I can send it to you and say, hey, do you have some suggestions, or can you take a quick look at this and give me some quick suggestions? Even though we're past the so many weeks, that would work.
Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
100%.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
By the way, Joey did a really great Twitter space with Dino the other day. So
Dino. Oh, with
Art
AOP.
purpose. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know he put his name out there. I didn't even
well,
know
it's
he had
he
a Dino.
signs it in all his stuff.
He
So
did
Oh,
because he got doxxed, so he just rolled with it.
oh, yeah. I remember
oh
that.
yeah. Anyway, I just want to say he did a really great job. So any of you, yeah, Joey's got some great stuff. So I
Thank you.
sent you a copy, a little memento in your Twitter. I tried to do it in Discord, but I don't have Nitro, so it was too big to upload. So I sent you a little memento of your space on
Gotcha.
Twitter.
Pretty much everything I've learned, Dan's taught me, so just repurposing his stuff.
And I just take I take what Joey tells me about psychology and start to study that, and then business is like the opposite way. So it's
Not to go on a rant, but this is all jokes aside, this is a great reason why networking is so important with this because Dan, when I was starting, when I was a couple months after I got going, Dan was one of the first people who, maybe the first person who really reached out to me. We got in a group chat together with some other people, but Dan and I stayed close and we've been, constantly talking. He brought me on to help manage the MMHQ community and stuff like that. And he's had a huge effect on my business and everything like that. And there have been some other people that I've met that I consistently talk to as well. So when you have these people, like Dan said, I learn a lot from him and use it in my own stuff, and he's learned from me and used it in his stuff, and that creates a great collaboration. So you all win together, essentially. So don't be afraid to network with other people.
yes. And it is that so I guess a lesson along with that too is Joey and I we should create an entire podcast just like on our journey and like the things we've experienced. It's kind of crazy where we've experienced multiple Twitter wars. Here's one piece of advice for those. I think everyone in here would steer clear of it, but like the masculinity side of Twitter and like the very like polarizing people, as aside from the creator space, that's kind of why we're in this space now, is because it's just much more peaceful. Everyone gets along. But in the other thing, there's like wars. Joey mentioned Art of Purpose being doxxed at one point, that was like stressful. It was like a straight up war between tribes. Like when we say networking and like forming mastermind groups, it's like two of them like colliding and trying to take each other down. Don't get involved with that stuff. It's weird to even like think I have to say this about Twitter being like a war ground at some point. But the other thing is that like it's not a one-time thing. Like Joey and I got lucky where it's like I reach out to him, we vibed really well, and like have stuck together this entire time. But there's been groups where it's like, yeah, you're good friends with people and you talk, and maybe I still follow up with like people here and there just to see how they're doing because we've been doing this for so long. It's like, hey man, remember when we started back growing on Twitter, writing these kinds of tweets? And they're like, oh yeah, and you kind of reminisce on it. But uh, like you'll go through, it sounds weird to say like you'll go through a lot of people, but you'll meet a lot of people along the way, and the ones that you connect with most are the ones that will stick around. And eventually you'll have a group of like 3, 4, 5 people that you can just consistently rely on and build things with. And it's just very rewarding. And it's weird like how it happens that way, where it's like Joey and I have the same interests just under different lenses, where it's like I like the philosophy side and he tells me things about neuroscience and psychology, and I'm like, oh no way, Alan Watts said something similar to that, but it's like more abstract. Or Justin Scott, for an example, is a really good friend where like he's more on the like mythical and magic side of things, and there's just a lot of crossover, and it's really unique to see how we're all saying the same thing just under different lenses, and we've kind of built that connection between us over 3 years of doing this.
We really should do a podcast based on this because I just want to riff off of this. Yeah, you're exactly right. One other thing I just want to add really quick is there's a lot of ways for most things. You know, I talked last time a lot about solving problems and having solutions and stuff like that, helping people. There's oftentimes a lot of ways to get somebody from point A to point B. But some creators and coaches and consultants fall into the trap of being very tribal about their way. I see this most often with fitness coaches, where it's like my way, like keto, low carb, and intermittent fasting is the way. When it's like there's a lot of different ways that you can take. But so the thing is, if you can have your way, and like I have the cognitive science way of improving your performance and all that good stuff, but you also got to be open-minded to other perspectives and ways of doing things, because then you can take little bits and pieces from other methods and apply it to yours, which not only optimizes your method, but it also lost my train of thought about what part B was, but it just makes it better than you only sticking in your own lane.
Yep. Yeah, that's another thing where it's like all of Twitter is just a learning experience, where it's like I got sucked into the ancestral health after doing like health stuff, being passionate about health for like 10 years and trying all these different diets, and I got sucked into the ancestral like raw liver, raw milk, all this stuff, which is good. Like I understand the reasoning behind it, but then you get dogmatic about it and it's like, oh no, like I'd rather eat raw liver than chicken breast or something like that. And yeah, it's just bad to fall into, but good to know from a, how do you say it, like zoomed out perspective. But yeah, we're kind of off topic, so
Well,
if
actually, I
anyone,
think it is on topic because I think it's going to come up because I think just social media and just the young and just the generate, just the way people are online, it's easy to just like go and do things when you're not meeting them face to face. So I think this is a really relevant conversation because I always did, like, I'm a tax expert by first trade. And when I ran my practice, I think I did 7,500 tax returns. I only had problems with 2 times. And one was my fault. I made a mistake. And the other had nothing that, it was just something that had nothing to do with me. And they just were trouble clients. But mind you, I kind of was able to pick who I had. And I would like, if I got any vibes, I'm like, oh, sorry, I have a wait list, put you at the back. And then I just never took them. But now that I'm doing online business, And I did 4 installments on one payment, and then they're not making their last one, and then they blocked it off their MasterCard and they won't make their fourth payment. And that's actually a little trick I would mention to all of you. I will never do this again where the last installment is after the program is over.
Yep.
So if your program is 2 months, the installments are 2 months. If your program is 3 months, don't make them over 4, because that last installment, they might just block it because they've got everything. And that's the kind of stuff I'm running into. And then so I had one like that not make their fourth installment, and then they went and got other people on board. Oh, I don't, like, because they're trying to justify not paying, and it's just the gong show of it. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I never had this when I did taxes. Like, literally, I handed them the bill, they paid the thing, and they were like, happy to see you next year, thank you. But online, you could like do everything in the moon for them. You're available. I am more available for my online clients than I ever was for taxes. Like, I literally would not answer during different, like, on call. Like, people DM you all times a day and whatever, and then they just burn you because they don't want to pay, or they don't know you and they're over in some foreign country. And so this is a really good conversation. So, like, I would like to know what you've done to minimize them. I had some harmed lessons the last 2 weeks where two people didn't pay their fourth installment after the program was over, and then just caused problems after that. And I was just like, seriously? Like, we did you a favor and now you're just being difficult. And the time I'm spending to chase after them is just like ridiculous, honestly. So I just like, what did you learn about doing online business? What would you tell your younger self? Because these are really relevant to all of us who are doing online business or coaching or all these things.
Nice. Yeah, that was actually one thing for this program, where for masters you were able to split, but I forget if I put it on there or where I put it on there, but I pretty much say, like, or no, it's usually when people DM me about it, because some people they see, so I put it on there where you can split it in 2 monthly payments, right? Because that's how long it was. You pay certain amount now, or half now, and then half a month later, because then the program ends in a month, right? So that's how I structured it, where those payments had to be made before the program ends. And then I put on the page where it's like, if the payment doesn't go through or it fails, you'll be removed. And that's pretty much it. And so then when people DM me and they say, hey, is it possible to do like 4 installments? And then I say, yes, but it'll have to be 2 weeks apart. Here's why: because if it goes longer than the program, then like I know that you won't be the person that like doesn't pay, but you're not going to pay. Like, you would word it in a way that makes sense and is cordial. But that's the main thing, is like those payments have to be made before whatever outcome there is. So in terms of like freelancing or something, it's like the payments have to be made before I actually, in terms of web design or something like that, before I transfer this website to you. So when I was teaching that, it's like, you build the website on your own server, you show it to them, you make changes, but until they pay in full, they do not have it on their server. They do not have access to really anything until you have that full payment. And if they don't pay, then I don't know, you can work something out so they get like a certain amount of what they paid for. But aside from that, it's like,
I think the other thing I would do too is add an NSF fund for installments that pay late as well. I never did that because like the installments I charged more if they're going to split it. But now, after how much chasing I have to do, and having to check it and bookkeeping and crap, I definitely would be putting a hefty NSF fund fee on anybody who doesn't pay on time. So that's another little tip for all of you. Like, I'd be putting like $40 or something significant, because you'd be surprised how much time you spend if an NSF, if their credit card bounces or whatever. So.
That's smart.
I didn't know you could block a payment. In Mexico, you can't. So I have to be very, very convinced that I want to do something, because I know I'm paying for it. My bank will never block it.
Yeah, you can do that here. You can just block the payment, and they just go there and tell the bank, their MasterCard, they're blocking it, and then you won't get paid.
When you say here, you mean Canada or the States as well?
Well, both.
Okay. Yeah, because in Mexico you can't. And I've had instances where it's been the service that I paid for has not been delivered fully, or some issues like that, and my bank will go like, well, we investigated, but they did deliver a service. It's like, yep, but it's not the one that I asked. It's a fraud, but they did deliver a service. So like I'm the one that gets screwed.
I just want to be upfront about that because people don't
Okay.
talk about those things and we don't prepare ourselves and then we're surprised later. So, and sometimes it's the person you don't expect it from at all, like someone who's doing royal and affluent, and then you're just like, really? Like, but anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. So,
Noise.
I don't know if anybody else has a question. If not, I'll ask one. I don't want to give anyone else a chance.
Hey, I have one real quick, kind of on in a similar vein. I haven't gone through all of the master's curriculum yet, but I've discovered throughout the journey that I bit off more than I can chew. I think I kind of was taking in a lot of stuff all at once. But one thing I've been thinking about that from your experience is that as you grew more in like followers and had much more of a connection with a ton of people, how did you handle folks who might have like commented in like problematic ways, or who were I don't know if you've had anybody who's like come across as like kind of out to get you, so like get people from your past, you like come out of the woodwork or anything like that? I'm just kind of like curious what it's like. I'm not saying that it's necessarily going to happen to me, but it's something I'm mindful of like how do you start to really like be strategic about handling problematic situations or followers who don't necessarily have the best intentions behind interacting with you.
Oh my gosh. On, so most of you know, like 2, 3 years ago, I was doing the web design stuff full time freelancing. And I think this was maybe 6 months ago, 7 months ago, something like that, where one of the people I did a website for, they were reaching out to me. And keep in mind, this was like 4 years ago, because this was like as I was doing web design way back 4 years ago. And they were emailing my web design email, which was completely different. And I didn't check it because it'd been so long. And so someday randomly on Twitter, I get like tagged in a tweet where this person is going off, where it's like, oh, this guy has time to write tweets and like interact with people on here, but he can't respond to a simple email about like giving access to what we own. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is this? Who are you? And they were like commenting on all of my stuff, just paragraphs upon paragraphs of like trying to tear me down in a sense. And so I DM them. One, the first thing is don't reply, especially if you have a big audience, because as you know, like even if you comment on something, it boosts that in the timeline and more people see it. And then that's just when things get crazy. And so like in the case of Art of Purpose, when he was getting like attacked and doxxed or whatever, he didn't respond to anything because he knew that his audience would start to see it and some of them would start to turn, because there's only so much of an argument you can control or like maintain a specific perception on, because then more people get involved and it becomes this whole drama thing. So the main thing is like DM them and just see what's going on. She didn't respond. And so I figured out like what it was, and I called the owner because I still had his number, and he had no idea who it was. Like it was one of his employees' friends, and I'm guessing the employee that was emailing me trying to get access to the website was like venting to her or something about how I wasn't responding or something. And so I responded, I'm just like, just send me your email and I'll transfer it over. And then it got resolved in like a day and she deleted the tweets. But aside from that, it's like, this also brings back into play what I was talking about, like the Twitter wars, where the people that were doing it to AOP, it was like planned out. It was strategic. They had it like the argument perfectly in place where if he said anything, it was wrong, right? So the main thing is just ignore it, let it pass over, and like do what makes sense. Because I've been in those situations where it's like someone will leave a bad comment or something, like trying to call you out or just trying to prove you wrong or something like that. And there's nothing you can really do except for because when that happens, like the stress hormones kick into play and you want to respond emotionally and start arguing, but that's the worst thing you can do because it just looks even worse. So one is just like take a step back, put your phone down for a bit, and like come back to it when you're more level headed and see if you should actually respond or DM them or just see what's going on. And then in most cases, it's like it's a hard balance because it's either you filter your or yeah, you censor yourself from putting out like a polarizing message as you get larger to avoid those things. And so it's really kind of dependent on your personality and what you want to do. Like if you want to be the person that just like argues on Twitter all day and that's fun to you, then sure, do it. But aside from that, just focus on like straight value and being as nuanced as you can. Like Ed Lattimore is super good at this, where he'll put out his opinion, but it'll be like, this is just my opinion. Like it doesn't really matter. There's no need to start an argument with me on this. So I don't know if that answers it because I don't really know. It's more of a situation based thing. But at the same time, best advice is just to ignore it, let the emotion fade and come back to it when you're level headed. And by that time, it's usually not a thing anymore. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's super helpful because I know that I'm trying to be really mindful and discern who I connect with and engage with. And right now, I think there's like a unique luxury about most people who are commenting are like, I can tell are like genuinely starting to have a conversation with me, which is great. And so, but as time goes on, I'm hopeful that I'll continue to have more and more conversations. And so it's just a matter of like processing and discerning like, oh yeah, who has good intentions and what do I just need to kind of like let roll off my shoulder when the time comes.
Yeah. That brings up the other thing about like opportunity overwhelm, where there comes a point like it's a blessing where like you can pick and choose, but man, there's you have to maintain like your creative time. That's why we always talk about like 2 to 4 hours of focus work where you block out everything and just like ignore everything and then kind of open yourself back up to the world, because it's like what you mentioned earlier about people coming out of the woodworks like when you get a higher follower count. It was insane. Like when I had that huge jump on Instagram of like 100,000 followers, it's like then everyone wanted to be a part of that. It's like, hey, congrats. And it's like, thanks. I don't know who you are, but it's like at that point you can't really do anything, or they're asking like, oh, how did you do this? How did you do that? Then I don't know. There just comes a time where it's like you can't answer them all. It's a blessing and a curse, but at the same time, you just grow. I don't know. But yes,
Definitely have to have a thick skin for a lot of online work. Like I've even from 1,000 followers to now I'm almost at 15. Just like these people you really invest in your first 1,000 or 2,000 aren't even there when you hit 15. And it's hard because you're like, I literally gave you my heart and soul, helped you out, and then they're just like disappear off the face of the earth, and then you have to almost start all over again with these new people who are like around at that level. So you must really have that down where there's this constant cycle. And so and I would recommend, just like this is a little side note, if any of you are doing coaching, like meet the person first, because the online personality does not always match the actual person. Because I know someone online who's got over 100K followers, smooth as honey, that you should see them online. Like I like fell in love with them, but then when I talked to them, holy cow, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like it's totally different. And I am so glad we had a conversation before moving forward. So it was totally different personally. So just like keeping like just not to scare everybody, but just being protective of your soul and your heart, right? So like how do you do that, Dan? Is that like something that you've really noticed too, is that sometimes the online personality is not always the one that you're getting personally? Maybe I just notice that more in women. I don't know. I notice that more with women than I do with men.
I haven't noticed it much. I've noticed the opposite kind of where um in I like to follow the people that are pretty polarizing. I don't know. That's just the advice that I take well, where it's like a harsh truth and it's like, oh shit, you're right. I should get back on track. And so that's kind of what I used to write, and maybe will write more of. So if you guys see me being polarizing and like very not dogmatic, but like I don't know, there's some tweets that have done well for me. It's just like I'm giving advice to myself. I'm being harsh on myself at that point. But like I like following the ones where people are polarizing, and when I've gotten on a call with them, they're very calm. They're just like, yeah, man, I just write this because it sounds good. It's what I believe. And like talking with the people, like they're just a normal human. Like all, I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't really have one.
Jordan Peterson.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's another good idea. Like even I've seen Jordan Peterson's interviews or like podcasts with people that aren't trying to attack him, and yeah, he's very calm. Another one, crap, it was just Kino Body, Greg O'Gallagher. I used to follow him all the time for like fitness stuff, and he's very like when you see his Instagram, it's like this guy's a douche. But then you see him in like podcasts and stuff, and he's just a normal guy. Like he's extremely good at marketing. And I don't know if there's something to be said there about like those two things not being congruent, but he has helped a lot of people. But he's a cool guy, like when he's in interviews and just a normal down to earth guy. But that's what I've noticed.
Well, I think that's, I mean, I've followed Greg for a long time. I think that's just like his stage persona, you know? And even when he was, I remember a lot because I actually heard about Martin Berkham before Greg,
Yeah.
right? And so, so I started following Lean Gains. And then all of a sudden, because of Lean Gains, like all of these ads for Greg started appearing, you know, like 9 years ago. And I started following him, and I noticed that, you know, from the get-go, he was like doing the videos with the Lamborghini, the Ferrari, you know, the mansion and everything. And because for people that don't know, like he inherited a lot of money. His dad was like a huge real estate mogul in Canada. And when he died, he inherited it all. And so he was doing that. And I remember that a lot of haters were there like saying, hey, like, why are you posting this? It's not like you earned it. No, it's not your money. And he was just not giving, you know, like a damn. He was just doing his thing. And I agree with you. Like he looks like a douche on social media, but then you hear him in interviews, and he's like, I actually did a coaching with him like 3 months. He was doing like calls because it was a group coaching, and he's actually like a very like normal guy and just that, like down to earth, at least with the group, you know. But everyone else just like he's got this big persona, right? And but he's had it like from the beginning. And then on the other hand, Elliot Hulse, he started as a really normal, you know, just like boot camp guy, and now he's like just gone to the other side, you know, like the manosphere and all of that stuff. And it's I don't know, and yeah, and that's the thing. Like he realized that doing those like extreme things, right, and just like really being drilling down on stuff that might not be politically correct, it's working for him, right? But he's at a place where, I mean, he's got millions of followers, so he really doesn't give a damn, right?
Yeah.
And but I wanted to add something to what Colleen was asking. I'm from Mexico, and I had Twitter. I've had Twitter since like 2008 or 7 or something. And what I did was I started from scratch, and I started doing it all in English. Exactly because I was afraid that my friends in Spanish, you know, in Mexico or whatever, were gonna make fun of me, you know, or whatever. Like they were gonna, like my friends, you know, like some of them were gonna become haters, or some of them were just gonna be like drilling down on me, like, oh, why are you talking about this, right? And because that's the culture down here. Like there is a saying in Mexico that Mexicans or even Latinos as a whole, we're like crabs in a bucket. So you'll have a bunch of crabs in the bucket, and as soon as one starts going up, the rest of them will like bring him down. So I took all of that, and I'm like, I'm just gonna start it anonymously, and I'm just gonna do it in English, and I'm not gonna add any of my friends, you know. So instead of trying to add my friends and have like an immediate 100, 200 people following me, I was like, nope, I'm starting from zero because I was afraid of that actually. And now that, I mean, I don't have a huge following, but like 5 months in, I have like 1,500. Now I'm using my other Twitter just to like, I don't know, retweet some of the ones that I do on the one that I have right now. because at this point, even if it's a small following, like I realize that there's people that I don't know are resonating with it or something, because at least I have following. So I'm just like, I don't care anymore if my friends from Mexico like look and say, "Oh, Oscar's got 2 Twitters and now he's trying to do this content creation thing," which, to be honest, should have been from the get go. But I don't know. I also had like that little thing in my head saying, "No, man, like don't don't have them there." Right. And so yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to that because I know what you meant.
Yeah. I okay, so 2 lessons here. I'll keep it quick because I know you had a question, Oscar. Is that the first lesson is this is extremely hard to do. But like when you come across those polarizing tweets or posts, like it's very easy to label that person as like, I don't like this person. I'm never going to talk to this person. But I think it's like a good personal growth potential to like follow them and try to understand what they're actually saying and not take out one tweet of their 20,000 and like form an opinion based off of that. Uh, because it could lead to something good, but it also could lead to something bad. But that's how life is. And the next thing is be careful. So, in terms of like my close friends from like college, who I'm still in touch with, and I still hang out with, when I first started, I was kind of like, I'm just gonna do this. I'm not gonna care what they think, and they'll throw like little jabs at you. They were like they like throw little jokes or like, oh, remember when Dan tweeted about this thing about how you should never watch Netflix, and yet we're here watching Netflix, and you're like, okay, yeah, you're kind of right there, but like things like that, but that's cool. Like you can handle that and like learn from that on your own. But one thing that I would recommend staying clear of is like using those experiences you have with your friends as content. Because there was one time where I went through this. So for my birthday one year, maybe some of you remember the podcast, but for my birthday, yeah, for my birthday one year, I went to Seattle with my group of close friends, and this is like a story I told on the podcast. And uh, what they wanted to do was just pretty much drink all day and like have fun, and that's what we did. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let loose. I'm gonna have like a good time with my friends, and I did have a good time, and I tried to make that very clear. And so I wrote an email about it, about like what I'm going to do after a long weekend of drinking and talking about my goals, and like a new fire was lit within me or something like that. But man, the drama that started, where they took it personally and thought that like I was talking down on them and talking down on like drinking all the time. And when I was like full participating in it, and I just wrote about it. But man, that caused like a huge split between the friend group, and like I was trying the entire time, like I didn't mean it in that way, but they just wouldn't have it. And so it was a good learning experience. But overall, it's like, if you can, if you want to write about those experiences, just don't make it very clear about like the specifics of it, or just make sure that your friends aren't on your email list and are going to read through it and text you about it, this entire long post about all that stuff. So yeah, that was fun.
Dan, can I ask you? So first of all, I appreciate you being so vulnerable with all of that, because it is part of just doing online business, and it's true. Some of what you said. What I wanted to ask you is like, if through all the curriculum that you put out there, which was amazing and vast, sometimes a bit much. Well, I am only part way through now because it's just a lot to take in. And I actually even have read some of the books that I know that you're getting some of your material from. But like, out of everything that you have, where do you think the like real nuggets are, where you're like, I hope they really implement these things, they have the best ROI? So like specific, maybe week or whatever, where you're like, these have the best ROI. If my students only did this one chapter or this one segment or these two, I hope that they do these two things. I'd love to know what those are to you after now that you've completed this.
Yeah. So the first thing that like really changed, it really simplified a lot of things for me, was pretty much what's going in the new course, which is like a distillation of the second module of bachelor's, which is pretty much the content ecosystem, where it's like put all of your effort into outlining a quality newsletter, write that out, and the magic here, I guess you could say, is like keeping in mind what that newsletter is going to be turned into throughout like everything else. So if it's going to be eventually condensed into a thread, then some section, usually the last section of the newsletter, where it's like 10 steps that I learned or whatever, like you want to kind of formulate that so it would work well in a thread. And then being able to look back at that newsletter and use it for when you're scheduling tweets. So I take a lot of time I take like 2 days or 2 mornings to outline the newsletter, flesh it all out with the template that's in there. And then throughout the week, I write like 30 minutes at a time. I'll finish like section by section and go through and edit it. And then I'll condense it into, I've been doing this recently, is I condense it into a LinkedIn post first, because it has a character limit and it forces me not to drag on points and only include the most important things. And then that can just go straight into a thread. And then what I also learned is that the LinkedIn post is just long enough where all of that text can fit perfectly into a 10-slide Instagram carousel. So that's the main thing. If we were to like focus on one thing in terms of content, it would be providing depth and unique perspective in the newsletter, because that builds like authority, and it like kind of, I don't know, it's longer than a tweet. It holds attention more than a tweet, and it builds that connection with the reader a lot more. And that's what I think is missing if you're focusing all of your attention on the timeline. Like even if you do, like you reply to a lot of people or do this and that, the newsletter is just like that much more in depth and will cause those mindset shifts. And then turning that into a thread and then breaking those into tweets so you can plug the newsletter. Because in the newsletter, that's where you're going to have links to your products, services, even lead magnets or just other things. And that's how I make, aside from when I'm promoting or launching something, that's how I make the majority of my sales, is I will just plug one backlog newsletter a day under my tweets, in my Instagram stories, under a LinkedIn post, whatever it may be. And then people read that. And so I'm knocking out like 4 birds with one stone there, where I'm building that depth and authority. So like I stick in people's heads. They're seeing my products after reading through something that could shift their mind or build that trust. And then they click and they willingly buy, right? It's not like I'm trying to push it in front of their face, and it just feels better to do that. So it's like your content gets that much more powerful because you're not worried about like, how do I word this in the best way to make the sale, right? And then the other bird with a stone that you're killing there is if you have the newsletter opt-ins, like in the backlog newsletter, then that's also how you gain newsletter subscribers. So that's like literally all you have to worry about in terms of content is writing a newsletter, condensing to a thread, writing tweets, and then plugging some newsletter under your content so people can read through it, subscribe to the newsletter, and potentially buy your products or services. And doing that every single day, it compounds, then more people see your products and services, so they buy. So that is like the one thing that has really become the forefront of everything. That's what I do every single morning is I wake up, I go on a walk, but I'm testing that and not going on a walk, but then write, outline, and just make the newsletter super high quality, super high value. And then from there, everything else kind of falls into place. So that's the main section. And then the other thing, the other main point that I would highly, highly recommend is just put out, I know you're already doing this, but just put out products and services. Like just put them out, no matter whether or not they're going to fail. Put them out, launch them, practice, right? That's the best way you're going to learn to market yourself and your services. And either way, with the newsletters and the products that you're writing or the curriculum that you're writing, you're getting your all of your ideas out, right? You have something to iterate on at that point. Like it's not completely, if you make 0 sales, it's not useless. It's the most valuable thing in the world because you have something to build on top of. And like that's how Modern Mastery was created, where it's like I had 3-4 products that I didn't really like, I'd kind of grown past them where it's like I could do better here. And so I just packaged all of that up and had like I could take sections of the course or all of the courses and just start making them better consistently in the community. And so that gave me like a year's worth of content for the community that I was just building on top of, and it became easy to write that way. And then after that, it's like, okay, I'm missing this piece, and I wouldn't have, like, that missing piece wouldn't have came to me if I hadn't built all of that stuff previously. So it's like, okay, the cohort seems to be the next step. Like, what's missing in the community that I could build here, and then tie the two together. And then when I did that, it's like, okay, well, I'm kind of going in, like, since I've built so much stuff, it's like, well, self-improvement stuff is good. Online business is like good, but I want to do something new and something that I resonate with. So it's like writing, like that's all I do nowadays. And I wouldn't have figured that out if I hadn't built stuff before. It's like, it wasn't web design. It wasn't this, it wasn't that. It was like writing is the foundation of everything I do. Why would I not start talking about that more and like plug that piece of the puzzle in there? So it's literally, if I could distill this into one piece of advice, is just have something that you're always building. Like have some form of side project that you are consistently building, whether that's a lead magnet, a product, a potential service, a better version of your service, a better version of the product, maybe brainstorming a community, and just having something to outline or work on, because the benefits of that go far, far, far beyond just like putting something out online. That's like, for those that have read Flow, like that's how you enjoy your time, is you're making progress on a project that you have a vision for in the future. And it's just like a way to enjoy your days, is by consistently building something of value, or creating, or create, which is now my Twitter header. So, and you start to develop the meaning like of things as you go along with that. And then that just adds depth, and it gives you more newsletter ideas, and then boom, bam, bing. It's just fun.
Sweet. I think like what you said about, even if it doesn't sell or do well, it still adds credibility, because people are like, oh, they did that. Most people don't know that people didn't buy it, or that it didn't go. They just see you as an, oh, they were an expert. For me, it's a little difficult because my major professions are, one, I'm a crop farmer, so agriculturally I still no one cares on Twitter about, and I never, well, I mean, once in a while I write about it, but not much. And then the other is tax, which I don't offer. I have that tax. It only applies mostly to Canadians, which hardly any of my following is Canadian, so neither of those really apply a lot. So that's a bit of my problem, because most of the products I offer have nothing, no one on Twitter even cares about, other than if I do like coaching and stuff. But I am running into one dilemma, because I have a personal newsletter that I haven't put too many out of, and I want to keep that. I want to keep it because I just want to be able to like talk about some like my own personal stories and epiphanies that people learn from. And I know from Twitter Spaces, like I've landed crazy followings from massive accounts just from like sharing analogies in Twitter Spaces. And so I want to keep those on newsletters. I can't really tweet about them very well. I'm not very good at it, and I don't care to do that very much. But I can put it into a newsletter, right? Give it an analogy with a lesson. However, now that I have this Medici Modern Polymaths community, it's supposed to be putting out a newsletter, and people are signing up for it, although it hasn't gone out yet. Like they just go to the website and they start signing up for it already. And I'm like, oh crap, now I have 2 newsletters. But it has a bit of a different focus, because the polymath community is a little bit more about like the advantage of being a polymath. And the new website that's going up has a public version to it, where the members will be seen publicly, so that people can go to look for them to hire, or, look at their articles that they're writing. So it's got a very public end to it. So how do you recommend navigating? Because one, I don't really like writing. I can write well, but I don't like it. I prefer to speak any day. I'd rather just go up and do a video. I don't really like video either, but I'd rather audio something in. But like, what do you recommend for navigating those two worlds? And maybe there's no real good answer because I see you just put everything into one thing, even your podcast, everything is just one thing now instead of two separate entities. But I guess I'm doing the thing you did. And maybe in the end, I'll wish I gave up my personal newsletter. But like, would you say should I just give up the personal newsletter and just roll it into the polymath one, or like what do you kind of think about it? What would you do?
Yeah. So I it, for Modern Mastery, I have like a few other people that are posting now, but when I first started, it was a weekly thing where I was posting an article weekly. And the main thing is
Mhm.
just like making sure that there is a specific thing that you are talking towards there, because my newsletter at that time was more so like that, it was personal experience and the lesson I learned. So having that theme for your newsletter where it's like every week you get like a story, you don't really have to put that, but you get like 5 things I learned this week on XYZ that is somewhat related to your community so you can promote it. And then in the
So like maybe
community,
like I have a couple members. I mean, obviously they're all polymaths, so some of them are freaking geniuses, and I learn amazing stuff from them. So like I could be like, hey, this week from George and his mind skills, he taught us this, and then or
Mhm.
like yesterday we did a seminar on like OBS, and anyway, it's kind of nerdy stuff, but I could like put that in there and then be like, hey, this is what we learned as polymaths. This is how you could use it in your thought leadership, for example. So that would be
Mhm.
more the focus of the community newsletter, like highlighting members and but putting my personal bit in it, or like that way, like what am I learning from the members and focusing a bit more on them. And is that what you mean?
Kind of. So what I did in Modern Mastery is like that was where I gave business value, where it's like I talk about business and the importance of business, the why behind business in my newsletter, and like kind of use everything I'm reading or learning at the time to explain that, right? But then in Modern Mastery, it was just like straight actionable advice, if
Oh,
you would
okay.
say. So then at that point, the actionable advice tends to be pretty short and to the point, and I could write that like nothing because it's already at the top of my head.
Okay.
But then the newsletter was more so like creative. It was more content focused, where it's like entertainment and
Okay, yeah, that's
inspiration
what I
as
want. I
opposed
want the
to,
one to be my creative mind, and the other one to be more my business mind. Okay.
yeah. Because that's the other thing is for the newsletters, like it's been more actionable recently, but like most of the time I'm just like riffing and going off on certain concepts and like having fun with it. But then since you're talking from your own experience, there's so many different ways to tie in your community, where it's like you can give a lesson that was taught in the community after talking about learning per se, or the importance of learning, and just be like, if you want more on this, go here. And they don't even have to be like too related. It's like people follow the newsletter because they want to read that for a specific reason, but then if they want more and they check out the landing page and it's a fit, then it works.
Okay.
Like I see it more so from a disconnected point of view, where it's like this may help you if you're already interested in these other topics from the newsletter, rather than like here's a newsletter that is just meant to sell you on the community. It's more so here's like something creative, something fun, something that'll change your mind. But then here's also what I offer if you want that more actionable stuff that wouldn't really do
To
well
keep
on the
to well, not
timeline.
everybody on my personal newsletter and polymath, so they're not going to care about the community.
But
So
even then, you can talk about the
well,
importance
that's
of
what I
that.
mean, just not making it like all about polymaths
Ah, right.
in general, right? Like if I want to give an epiphany, but that's very helpful. So you're basically saying keep to, that does make sense. Like the community newsletter can have like merch. Hey, we have merch now because we have a merch plan. So like, hey, we have merch now. So it's a bit more, it's very community. So you're saying keep to, it's just, I might just have to have someone write my community newsletters just so I have some mental space. So, okay.
Yeah, that would work too.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Very helpful.
Nice.
Hey, um, give me 1 second because I wrote them down. um, so I have a couple quick ones and some. I'll start with those ones. When it comes to content, how often do you repurpose it? Because I was looking through some old tweets, and I was realizing, looking at other people's old tweets, that like every now and then they just like basically post the same tweet, they just change something. And also, do you delete tweets that don't do well eventually, or right away, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, I used to delete tweets that didn't do well. Um, that was that was like at the time where I was starting to break 100 likes on each tweet. And if they got under 100, it was more like personal preferences. Like, I don't like how this looks. I'm just going to delete it. Uh, but if it like super underperforms or you're just not happy with it, then yeah, delete it and come back and rework it. I don't really have a set system there. It's more so like personal feel and what you want on your timeline and how it kind of impacts uh, people's perception, like as they're reading through the content. The In terms of repurposing, it's kind of the same thing where there have been times, and this happens once you have a lot of content written, where it's like, oh man, I don't have any tweets for the week. I'm just going to go back, look for a high performing tweet, delete that one, copy paste it, and post it. And then my justification, if people ask me, is that I have new followers. They haven't seen this tweet before, and it was a high performing tweet. That's if no one ever has. But if someone were to be like, you posted this before, it's like, well, yeah, I have more followers now, and they haven't seen it. And aside from that, there are times like when I'm just really lacking ideas. Like sometimes ideas are flowing. I schedule like 5 billion tweets at once and it just works. And then there's other times where it's like I have absolutely zero idea what to post. Like I just, nothing will come to me for the life of me. So I'll go through like in Tweet Hunter or even uh like my top performing tweets, which thankfully, like that's all my Instagram feed is now. So if I ever need inspiration, I just scroll to the bottom of my Instagram feed, start looking up, and then wait for an idea to come. And then it's not even, it's kind of like repurposing those tweets. If I just can't think of anything, it's like I'm going to rewrite this in a way that I think will do well. But other than that, it's like, oh, this actually sparked another idea towards this. A good way to think of that is like, or one, a great way to think of get content ideas to begin with is to just reply to people, like engage with people, and that usually can be its own tweet. But think of it when you're going through your top tweets, think of like, if this were someone else's tweet, how would I reply to it? And then that should spark like the next idea. So whether it's a personal experience or just like another thought on top of that, and then that should still perform pretty well since the previous one did perform well, and then you can kind of structure it to perform even better. So
Okay.
as a whole, in terms of deleting or just repurposing or reposting, it's usually just like personal feel or when you just don't have any ideas. And that can
Okay.
drag on longer than you think. Like there have been weeks where it's like, I just don't have any ideas. Like I need to go back and just iterate and start back from the time where I was having a lot of ideas and hopefully get that flow going again.
Yeah, going I was going back yesterday through some old replies actually, and I was looking at replies that I did at the end of April, and I realized that a lot of my replies I couldn't see what the reply was for because a lot of the people had deleted their tweets, so I
Yeah.
couldn't see what I was replying. But yes, I went through those to kind of have an idea of what I could just post as a single tweet. In terms of now, in terms of I mean, I know this is a little bit broad of a question, but for example, when should you start taking on one-on-one clients if you're going to charge at least a small amount, from the get-go, like in terms of how much of the outline of what you want to include in your offer should you have? Like, should you have the whole outline, or should you have just like the general idea? Or like, let's say that, like, for example, with me, that I want to help a guy with going through a tough breakup. I know that's the end result, and I kind of know already like a lot of the steps. But do I need to have everything done, or can I just know, like, so that's the end result, and I know that the very first thing is this one. So then I can start like offering it, and then I'll just work the second, third, fourth one as we go.
Yeah. You can do it that way where you start with the first one as like the starting point, but then you make the intention where it's like um, from that call, you decide what the next step is. Where it's like you figure out where their sticking point was in that call, and then that sets the scene for the next call, and you can start to like create things from that. So it with that, you have to accept that it's going to be a bit abstract. It's going to be a bit uncomfortable because you don't know exactly what's going to come in the next call, but you kind of just have to trust the process. And if you don't have any idea of like, okay, what's the next call, then you can take a step back and think like, okay, well, what may have led up to this? Like if it was a breakup, maybe it's like, how are you conducting yourself in the relationship itself, right? So you can start to tackle different problems here and there if you don't have that idea for the next step until it comes. And then once you go through one, two clients, you can kind of zoom out and start to piece it together in a way that makes logical sense.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Uh, the other one is, I don't, is it, I don't want to rant or vent, but um, I've seen what would be the best way, like what would be the best way? And I know you said like post 2 to 3 times a day and all of this, but is there any other thing that you could do if you don't have the budget, to like hire a ghostwriter or hire or buy like tweets from, people selling them for 50, 60, $80 a pop, right? And selling, I'll sell you minimum 30 retweets or whatever. So that's $2,400 or something. Um, like what would be the best way to actually like start, growing more? Because I've seen like I started with a few guys and a few people that were basically the same level, and now I'm seeing that a lot of them are 15, 20, even 35,000 followers in. And I know that at least some of them actually hired a ghostwriter, right? And hired like a big retweet package for like, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000 a month or whatever. And I mean, I would love to say, yeah, I could do that too, but I'm, like it's, let me rephrase the question. How do you play the game when sometimes the game is rigged in terms of if you have the cash flow, you can just invest $5,000 and get 20,000 followers without you doing anything else, right? And if I don't want to not waste, sorry, it's not waste. If I don't want to pay for that, like how do you, what would be the best avenue to do that without actually paying someone else?
Yeah. So the best way that I can think of is leveraging all opportunities that don't require payment on a growth thread, because that, let me explain. So the I think people stray away from writing like the potentially viral threads that result in a lot of growth because it feels like they aren't sticking to the point of what they're trying to sell, right? And so that's where the three pillars come into play, where there's growth, there's authority, and there's authenticity. And the authority and authenticity content, whether it be in the newsletter or tweets, is more so the actionable advice, like very niche, close to what you're trying to sell, specifically for authority. But then in terms of growth, it's about talking about a broad and relevant topic that most people can resonate with and putting that into a thread that is structured in a way that will do well, right? And then in that thread, one, you can send it to your engagement groups. If you follow like that non-needy networking process that we talked about, where you're in contact with larger accounts, you can send it to them and just be like, hey man, wrote this, I think you'd like it, and then just hope for the best, hope they retweet it or at least engage or like it. And then inside the thread, what I've noticed is, and I may be a part of this, is when in the actual curriculum, when I talk about like tagging large accounts in like the post itself. So hopefully they'll retweet. I see people, like not any of you, just like people in general, they'll tag like huge accounts, like 100K plus, and like in that case, like I'll just speak from experience here. I there are a lot of days where I just don't check my notifications because it's impossible on all platforms, right? So I don't even see it, and then that tag was wasted. So my best advice in that case is when I was the most active, so this is also from personal experience and just like from what I've seen, tagging people from 10K to let's say 50 or 60K is your best bet, because those are the people that are the most active. Those are usually people that don't consider their retweets like extremely high value, or there's not much demand for them. Because when I first started out, I was like, I thought the like Ed Lattimore was at like 100K at the time, and I'd see him and he's like, he's way out of my league. Like I'm not even going to talk to him. Like I have no chance, which was kind of a weird mindset and probably false. But I focused my attention mostly on people that were like between 10 and 20K, because that's still a ton of people. And even like one retweet from a 20K account has the potential to make it go viral. It really does, if it gets in front of the right people that see that retweet, right? So that's the main thing, is focus more so like on those mid-range accounts when you're either trying to reach out to them or just like get retweets or even tag them when you bring up a lesson that they taught, because that's what's going to get you the most reach, and those add up over time. Because like I remember when I first started and was trying to get retweets on my web design content, I was in contact with Well Paid Geek. I don't know what he's at now, but he was around 15K at the time. And so I was talking with him, we hit it off, and like he would just retweet my stuff. I even offered to pay him, and he's like, no, I don't think they're worth anything. Like just send it to me, I'll retweet you. And then eventually he wanted to affiliate for the product. And so that's the thing, is like not writing off the 10, 20, 30, 40K accounts, because that's still a huge audience. Like even another thing is, even if they don't get engagement. Now, this is a story for another time, but there's one guy who was at 12K when I first started, and he's still at 12K. I have no idea how. And he posts every single day, however so often. I think his account's just screwed, but I don't know. And at the time, I don't think he was getting very good engagement, but I think he was the first person I paid like $100 for 30 retweets. And his my tweets after he retweeted them would get more engagement than his tweets. And so it's like, I have no idea how it works, but I wouldn't write off people that have super low engagement themselves, because the retweets, like more of their audience may see your tweet than they even see their tweet. I don't know what part of the algorithm that's in, but it worked. So that's the main thing, is focus on connecting with the people that like aren't out to sell you on something, or they're also at the beginning of the game, and they may not have, like they may not be focused on building or selling an offer right now, and they have more time to check their notifications and give a lot more attention to people that could be of value to them in the future. So that's the main thing, is bring focus down a bit. Focus on, like, at least once a week, I would say, is try to write a potentially viral growth thread on a broad and relevant topic that most people can relate to, like super top of funnel thread. I'm talking like you go to YouTube and you look up how to get over a breakup, like quite literally watch that video, note down the big talking points, write those out as your own in the thread, and take the headline or the title of the YouTube video and spin that into like a hook. But of course, like there's iffy things there. Like write it as if you would write it. Like don't just write out like, oh, step one, exactly what was said in the video. No, like create your own steps from it, but just use it as a structure or a framework to write your own. right? Because you know it'll do well at that point, especially if the right eyes get on it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. It makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It. The reason why I was asking is because I kind of got a little bit demoralized during the past 2 weeks because there was a tweet that I had and that I did use like a retweet, that I paid for a long time ago, and it did, like almost any other one. And then there's this other guy that literally told me like, "Hey, I'm gonna post this," and it was basically my tweet. And he told me like, what, like, does it look familiar? And I'm like, oh man, awesome. And I'm like, hey, I'd appreciate a shout out, because the guy's like at 20K now, and he was at 18K 2 weeks ago. I think he did that, right? And that thing just blew up, and I'm like, why, why, why can two people, write the exact same thing, and like one does very well, and the other like goes viral, and the other one's like just does not, and it's not like I would say like, yes, I'm the best writer or I'm the best one at doing. I know that a lot of the things that I write are not like the best, and we're all using formulas or templates to a degree, right? And just like copying somebody and changing it a little bit and doing it to another, because I do that a lot as well. But I don't know, that's what got me a little bit, like demoralized, as I was saying, because I'm looking and saying, well, yeah, this guy did spend like $3,500 on a ghostwriting on a ghostwriting and retweeting package, right? And I don't know. Anyway, from that, like last time you said that, for example, I Am Aaron Will is someone that has like okay engagement, and he's not selling for ridiculous amount of money the retweets. Like, what would you say? What would you say? Like, I don't know, like a good value like ghostwriting package that I could go for or something. Because at the same time, like I know a friend of mine bought an $800 one, and he wasn't getting any engagement, right? So he just like basically wasted those $800. And then I know some other people that are charging 6K, but I know that they'll do well just because of the accounts that they're using. So just here, like, what would you say it's a good one, or what to look out for in case like somebody would like to go down that road?
Oh man, I honestly don't know, because my whole thing is like I'm very protective of my content. If I were to give you $1 for every time that JK has sent me tweets to post and tried to land me as a client, I'd like you'd be a millionaire, because every single time it's like, no, I'm not doing this, man. Like I like writing my own content. And that's what I focus a lot of my effort into, and that's what I like doing. Like I love building the projects on the side, but once those projects are built, like I would love to just bring my focus to content full time, just because it's fun. But that's different for everyone. So in terms of that, it's like I don't know a good price, because the common advice is just like, once you get results, increase your prices to something that's like exorbitant and target people that can afford that, right? So in terms of that, I think your money is better spent if you want to invest in those 10 to 20K accounts that don't understand the value of their retweets yet, where you can go in and be like, hey, I'll $150 for 30 retweets, or like, hey, can I pay you $20 to retweet this thread? And then go from there. And usually those are best put on those potentially viral threads.
You could also just pay. You could also just pay to promote too for that kind of pricing. Like on the Twitter, you can do pay 20 or $30 to promote, and that can help too.
The only downside of that is that it says like promoted on there, and like people don't like that. Where it's like on Facebook, if someone puts out an ad and then they like all the comments will just be negative, like, why is this promoted on my feed, and all that other stuff. Like I'm a big fan of.
I never had it both times. I got way more leverage out of those two. I tried it just to see how it would work. So like on the flip side of what you were talking about, so now my account, like by the end of the week, I'll probably be at 15K, or close to. So then now I assume I'll probably start getting approached, or I could approach people for doing retweets because I'm around that area. So like, how would you do that? I don't necessarily want to put that on my timeline. Hey, I'm available for retweets if people want, but I mean, I don't want to not optimize on that if, of course, it's going to be value aligned or whatever. So I'm like that too. I'm fussy about what I retweet on my timeline. But
Yeah.
what would your suggestion be for those people who are kind of getting to that area where we could be approached or set up small packages for retweeting with the minimum amount of work on my time? Because I don't want to be like $20 is not worth my time to go and make up a freaking invoice and go to PayPal. Like honestly, I could make more money doing a consulting gig than like charge $20 for something.
Yeah. The main thing, I don't know. The main thing is like if they reach out to you for it.
Yeah.
The other thing would be like just talking about it like in a community. So Modern Mastery, for like if we talk about content writing, we talk about paying for retweets a lot. And so that generates a lot of interest for doing that. And yeah, that would be the main thing, is talking about it, not on the timeline. But aside from that, it's just like people will reach out eventually if they're in a similar space, I'm assuming. And yeah.
One little tip too, like the people who are coming out of Ship 30 for 30 have gone through some pretty good training. And months ago, I was just running too many projects. And so I saw a guy who had like 200, he just knew on Twitter, had like 200 followers, but he wrote really well. And I thought kind of resonated with my voice. Like he sounded like we could have similar voices in many ways. So I actually approached him and say, would you be interested in writing content for my Twitter for the next few months? And he just charged me like $20 an hour. We got on a call once every he ended up working for me for 4 months. And we just got on a call and talked. He just asked me a bunch of questions. And then he just would tweet it. He would just write it based on my answers. And then he took care of it. I think it cost me $200 a month. And he was learning as he went. And like, it wasn't like the most awesome content I had, but it was actually pretty good. Sometimes I'd almost hit like and go, oh, wait a minute, that's my post. It was like something he wrote. And I was still writing some of my own tweets, but at least that I knew it was covered, and I just took that off my mind while I was working on another project. So half of the tweeting was probably still mine, but he was consistent, and we had like a plan. And so he just kept me accountable. It was like, what do you want to talk about for the next few months? Kind of thing. But anyway, so that's an option too. If you see that little ship on there and you take a look and they have a small following, they might do it for a really low price. And yeah, it's maybe not the same as you're going to get for $6,000, but hey, he did pretty good. And the crazy thing is my account grew, and also because I was talking on Twitter Spaces like crazy. So I was growing like crazy at the time when when Spaces just started. I could get like 100 followers in one event sometimes. It was just like literally I go talk for 15 minutes and get 100 followers. And but anyway, but he was able to use that later for copywriting, and now he's actually doing full-time copywriting, but he doesn't do my copywriting because now his prices are way too high and he's doing other types of stuff, not Twitter. But anyway, I just want to put that out there. You could approach somebody with a little ship and be like, hey, are you interested in writing some content for me? And we'll do it on trial for a month if you're in a low budget. And he was like elated. Like he literally told all his friends that he got this copywriting job out of the blue. And like, it was just a young kid. He was super excited. I just like made his day, made his months.
Nice.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Samantha. I mean, I don't know how much time you had. I had a couple more questions, but there's another question in the chat. So I don't want to take more time if you want to answer that one first. And then let me know if I can ask a little bit more.
Yeah. So the normal way to grow on Twitter is, so like retweets are a part of it. Like I talk about it a lot just because I feel like it isn't talked about enough, or it's like swept under the rug because it's so normal on other platforms, where if you want to grow on Instagram, the first advice is like, oh, buy a shout out. And on Twitter, like it sounds weird. It's like, okay, why would I do that? But on Instagram, that's like the normal thing. That's what everyone recommends. I don't see that as a thing on LinkedIn, even though it very well could be with comments. But it's like influencer marketing as a whole. If I want to sell more of my e-commerce product, I'm going to send it to an influencer and pay them to promote it, or just use it and post a video of it. Same with TikTok, where like UGC, user generated content, like that's how you promote your brand, is through people with audiences, because the only other option is to run ads that way. So it's I wouldn't say it's the normal way to grow on Twitter, but I think it's an incredible way to leverage someone else's audience for faster growth. But as mentioned in like the very first module, there's a way of doing that organically where you're connecting with people, sending them your content, keeping in touch with them, replying to others. So that the organic method of growth is replying to bigger accounts with thoughtful slash insightful slash valuable replies, networking with accounts that are a bit above you. So then you can start to like slowly climb the ladder and get shares on your content. There is the like engagement group method as well. So it's really like it depends on your goals and how much time you have on your hands and how much capital you're willing to invest in your growth. So if you don't have much time on your hands, but you have a lot of capital and you are writing good content that you just want more people to see, then yeah, it makes sense to invest in some like influencer marketing of sorts. But aside from that, there are definitely manual ways to grow the account, which we talked about in like the very beginning of Bachelors.
I put a thing in the nest. That's something I think you guys could do too. And I noticed that I should actually tell Dino that too. But like, I don't do it as much now, but when I was running lots of spaces, I would write a thread about something I knew I was going to cover in the space. And I like auto post it right when the space started. And then in the space, I'd be like, oh, I just wrote a thread for you on that. And then I would post it in the nest. And then you get like way more retweets, like right there. And then, nice. And now Twitter Spaces has a little chat in the corner. So you could take it and then post it into the chat. And then it permanently stays with the replay. So when people go to go to your space and replay it, everything that was in that that space chat stays permanently. So you could also put that lead thread in there as well. And that's a good way to leverage. Like most of my initial growing was all on spaces. And I was in Ship 30 for 30 back in March when they were like kind of new. And I repurposed so much freaking content. It's not even funny. Like people would be like, I would like share an analogy. I'm like, oh, actually I wrote something on it. And in my Notion, I have like a spreadsheet of all my top things. I mean, they're in that weird atomic essay format. So they're not like the best, but it's still people will get a share of a bit of your voice because they hear you and then they read you and they're more likely to follow. But anyway, if you do it right when the space starts, you can do a thread. And then if you want to, you can even highlight parts of that. So if I'm doing a lesson, it's sort of like a slideshow, right? So I can put the first part of the thread and then just different ones in there. I just go and put them up into the nest as I go. And it's sort of like a slideshow. And that really can get your engagement up as well. So, and I haven't seen anyone else really doing it on spaces too much. So it's definitely a hack.
Yeah, that's solid. In terms of hashtags,
tell everyone to do it. By the way, I learned this from Samantha.
Yeah, I'll have to because it's like I like spaces. I just haven't done them very much. I've done them here and there, so it's not like I could say from my personal experience to do that. So yeah,
try one. Well, let's do one together. I've done lots of spaces. We could do one together, and then we'll see how it works. Because I mean, you could probably do it on your own too. But yeah, I'm like, hey everyone, we've got this up here, and then you just remind them a few times and then part way through the space you remind them again. But it helps when you have your co-host do it too and not just you, because it's less spammy if you're not promoting your own stuff sometimes. It's like, hey, did you guys see this? I learned a lot from Dan's post. Oh yeah, I dropped it in the nest for you. So it's super smooth when two people are working together, but the whole time you've got the entire thing planned, right? So but it's way better if somebody else says it.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay.
So let me know if you want to do it. I'm pretty good at the smooth drop in, not making it sound spammy.
Yeah, I'd be down. Things are calming down soon. Cool. Yeah, we can get everyone. We'll do a digital economics one and we can get everyone up there. I think that'd be sick. Or at least for the masters, awesome. I'll send an email out or something.
That would be great.
Cool.
I also have that question. The one whatever happened to hashtags?
they just don't do anything. They got overwhelmed with bots. So to answer the question, no hashtag. Don't do hashtags unless you create your own, or it's like you write something. It's like hashtag. Digital economics. I don't know, something. Yeah. But overall, like I used them for like at the very beginning it was silly, but there were coding accounts because I was talking about web design and development, and there were like coding hashtags where it's like code 100 or 100 days of code, where if you tag that, they would have bots retweet you, and the bots had like 5,000 followers just because people were following the hashtag, and so it didn't really work. It didn't do anything. Uh, so overall, hashtags not really worth it. It's more worth it to just like try to get eyes on your content via replies and other things.
I remember hashtags were used before for searching, but now you can just search
Yeah.
whatever word and you'll get, before you just got the hashtags, and now you just get whatever tweet has that keyword,
Right.
in it. Speaking of keywords, not a keyword, but a buzzword. um, so I've been thinking of how to optimize like my profile. I don't want to straight up go and like put in the banner, right? Like breakup coach or anything like that. You know what? Not at least not yet. I want to try out how that works. But I was thinking of maybe changing, because I don't want to talk about entrepreneurship that much right now. But I was thinking of putting like mindset, confidence, leadership,
Mhm.
masculinity. But then I'm like, is masculinity too much of a buzzword? Like the one thing I'm trying to not do is to get just, I know I'm small. It's not like a lot of people are gonna care, but I don't want to get like, stereotyped as one of the manosphere, MGTOW, red pill kind of dudes just for saying masculinity. So I don't know what your takes are in that, in terms of just adding that, if it's too much of a buzzword, if it really doesn't matter, and also like how specific do I need to be in the bio, right? Because again, just from the breakup coach, I don't know if I should change. I don't know if I should keep that I went from 0 to 2.7 mil and then sold the business or whatever. Like I don't know how, because at the beginning, before I came to digital economics, it was all about hyper niching, right? So you talk about one topic and then that's it. But the thing that I loved about it is the fact that, like you're giving us permission or the freedom to talk about 50 different topics, like three main ones, right? But you can talk about everything, and then that's why people are going to resonate with you, right? Because you're talking about all of your interests. So I'm just wondering whether, I should keep that, or how specific do I need to make it to kind of, because I think I could also optimize it, right? Like I know that I could go into a space and maybe talk about something, and then people might look at my bio and go like that, this guy doesn't have to do anything to do with the space, right? And I don't know, quick example was I got invited to talk about community in a web 3.0 NFT space, and I have nothing that says web 3.0 or NFT in my bio, and I was the only one there, right, that was doing that. So I'm not sure I'm not sure how specific it needs to be, or how like how much to change it or something.
Yeah. So to answer the last part first, I wouldn't worry too much about that because, well, I'll touch on this part, but the main thing is like people are interested in Web3 and like leadership, masculinity, confidence. I would argue that everyone is interested in confidence if you can get a good argument in front of their face, right? So that's the purpose with the bio, because the way that I see it now is bio should be optimized for followers, right? For followers, and then content kind of exposes them to new ideas, and then the threads or the newsletters are more focused on like actionable advice and helping people with like a more niche thing, right? And with the bio, I really like the leadership, confidence, forgot the first one. But in terms of masculinity, you can just add a word to the front of it to kind of change people's perception of it and you. So I know that Brian Kimson for a while was doing divine masculinity. And so that's like kind of contradictory. And so it sparks interest, and people are like, oh, what does that mean? That doesn't sound like toxic masculinity. And so then it's like up to you to tell them what that is and build the depth behind it in maybe like a newsletter or a thread. So yeah, confidence, mindset, leadership, those are all solid and they're broad. And then in the bio, it could be like, I write about confidence, mindset, and leadership so you can benefit. That's always been my go-to bio. Like when I was at a lower follower account, where like that just made the most sense. It's like, I write about these, here's why you should care. And that usually worked the best just because it's so straightforward and it's those interests are broad enough to capture people. And then in the threads or newsletters specifically, you can start talking about the niche aspects of those things, why they're important. And most of the time you can end with the angle of something related to your coaching.
Dan, I saw like some people are starting to switch that. Like I saw that Coach Clint switched it and he's doing the benefit first and then I write about after.
I think it could work. I think it's just a matter of like having the right pieces in place. Mm-hmm. I always gravitate towards like the one sentence ones. Just I don't know. That's just me.
Oscar, I don't think like NFTs and all that, they don't, as long as you have something that crosses over, like breakups applies to everyone. Like I had this software developer who kept bringing me on Spaces and he actually interviewed me on his live YouTube and he's like massive developer. Like that's all he talks about is just development, coding. He works for a company now that he represents. And he told me I was the only time he'd ever hosted somebody who was not a developer on his show. But you know what I talked about? Online networking. Well, that right? And so like, because I said to him, why do you want me on here? He goes, because you are awesome at online networking and I have management background and like I understand coders a bit and stuff. So like as long as you can position yourself for them, they understand that they need people that aren't from their own realm, I guess, in a way. So like I love that title. I'm the breakup coach. Why don't you try it? Like the thing with Twitter is you could just take the thing down after a week if you don't like it. Like what's the big deal? Only so many people are going to see that. So like, I think that's awesome. Like the breakup coach, I know 3 guys who are programmers. You and I've talked about that. Entrepreneurial programmers went through breakups and the one guy lost his business and he just couldn't function. He was just, super. And he's just now getting on his feet. I definitely, if I would have known you, I would have told them to go see you. So,
appreciate that.
Yeah. Like seriously, like I think maybe I'm the breakup coach for entrepreneurs or coder. Like you and I talked about that, right?
Yeah. No, and I am, that's exactly what that was a very helpful call. And I appreciate that.
And I got on a work call and I was just saying to him, like, I'm always talking to entrepreneurs and coders and software developers. And I don't know why they share with me, but I've heard about these like breakup stories. They don't go into all the details, but I can see like they are super suffering and they had a really hard time coming out of it. So
if you hear anybody else,
I think also because they're so isolated, because they work from home. So I think it sometimes takes them longer to overcome it because they're alone so much in their thoughts and they don't have that, a physical community to help them through all that stuff. So I wonder if that's part of the reason why it's harder for them in some ways. I don't know, but it seems to really set them back more than I see in a physical world in some ways.
If you hear of anyone else, send me my way.
Well, I will if I have any more. I'm kind of not taking many calls right now, like extra just Zoom calls with people to chit chat because I'm too busy. But when I do, I definitely will send them to you.
But what I meant though was, I don't have an issue going into NFT spaces, but what I meant was exactly optimizing for followers. What Dan was saying in terms of like, okay, so if I'm in an NFT space, like I get people going into my bio and they're like, nah, like this guy has nothing to do with NFTs, right? And so a lot of the times, like they're in the space for precisely the NFT part, right? Or the Web 3.0 or crypto or whatever. And I don't have that. And it's fine. Like I'm not going to add that if I'm not going to talk about it, right? Or if I don't know about it. But it was just a matter of asking about that to optimize when I go to spaces. But at the same time, when I retweet, when I get like people going into the profile, while at the same time, like I'm not loving my bio and I've thought about it very hard, but I haven't loved it for the past like month or so. Like I don't like the last part where it says, I help you get the life that you deserve or something. I want to be a little bit more specific. So that's exactly what I was asking, like how specific. I like that Like I do this, this, and this, so you can do this, this, and that, or what you said, like claim that had the benefit first, and then the other one. So, well, yeah, I don't know. I might have.
The spaces, because I've experienced this. Just say why it's okay. Like that's what worked for me. Like I literally would be in these like Danny Thompson will have me come up. Well, like he's all development. So when I go up there and we talk about like internships, how to get paid for internships. Well, I'm not a developer, but I understand I know how developers can get paid for internships. Like I know how they can. So like I go up there and I'm just like, like just for all of you know, I'm not a developer, but I do know how developers can get because, I've got this background. And then they just love it. And they like, anytime those like, I haven't been on those bases for a while because I just don't have time. But when I was trying to grow, for a while, I had so many developers following me. I had no development language, nothing on my bio at the time, like nothing like that. And they were following me like crazy because they need to know your skills. So like when you're a space, just say that. Like just say, I don't have Web3 on my space, but this skill applies to you because of blah, blah, blah. And then they're like,
I like that.
Okay. So like you just have like just one teeny little sentence, right? And then you just have to like connect the dots for some people. And then they're like, oh, I get why you're here and why you're valuable to me. So anyway, that helped me. Like it was crazy how many developers were following me for a while, and I'm not a developer at all.
Okay. I like that a lot. I also liked a lot what Dan said about the divine masculinity. I'm gonna think of another word for that. And have that, but
that's very Spanish.
No, not macho.
I'm just joking.
Yeah, I know.
So I just put that one in the chat, and I feel like that kind of implies like leading towards like that includes a breakup in it. You know what I mean? So everything you write relating to managing or getting out of a rut or a low point in life, it will attract people getting out of a breakup without you having to explicitly state it. And it can also be transferred over in like the negativity bias there where it's like, oh yeah, I'm in a low point in life, I'm going to follow you. That's a lot of people. And then your content will hit heavier that way, I think. So that's just like one iteration. If you like that, feel free to use that or.
Can you help me?
I like that.
My bio later too. Like I feel like I ask people to help me, but they don't understand what it's like to be a polymath, honestly. And I'm just like, right now I need to talk a lot about polymathy, which is hard to write a bio about. Like,
isn't that a good thing though? Because that way you don't get people that like, if you're not a polymath, you don't know what a polymath is. So. You
should see my DMs. I'm not joking. Now that I've been talking about online, we're doing these awareness spaces. People in my community are running these awareness spaces. I'm not joking. We get people crying in these spaces. I'm not joking. I get DMs from people going, my whole life I felt like there was something wrong with me, and now you're telling me I'm a polymath, and that like this is okay. It's not ADHD, or it's we're ADHD-ish, but that's okay. It can be a superpower. It's like insane. Even like my pinned tweet right now is how to know if you're a polymath. It's got like 1,000 replays. And mind you, people come to my profile and they see it. I'm still getting DMs about it. Like, hey, I just listened. I didn't know what a polymath is. I looked it up today and you have no idea how you just changed my life and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is insane. So I just don't know how to write it in a bio. Like I just changed my bio the other day and I don't like it. One of my friends like, Samantha, your whole bio thing sucks. You need to change it. I change it like, I swear, every 2 weeks. I'm like, Dan, that's like bio of the week. But I need one to just stick there. I need a good banner. It's hard because like it's hard. I don't know how to explain, and I don't want to talk too much about being a welfare kid. I do talk about it because people see like blonde hair white girl and they think, oh, that girl has had it so easy. I know, because people say this stuff to me, and I'm like, and the Africans are always like, when I hear you talk in spaces, I realize that the way you look is we all experience life the same underneath the skin and the hair and the eyes. But how do you portray that? I don't know. But I don't need to really attract people necessarily anymore who just looking for people to help them get out of a big rut. I just want to validate polymaths, help them. I want to validate them, give them some tool. Like the future belongs to polymaths. Here we go. Then include what you write about. Yeah, I love that because I literally was writing an article for our homepage today about 3 reasons why the future belongs. It's actually literally, Dan, what I wrote 20 minutes before we started today. I was talking about that being like, I'm not joking, Dan. I seriously wrote the future belongs to polymaths, and I quoted a Forbes article that was talking about that. Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I do. I like try to help people how to learn faster. Also just get over stuff through mindsets, right? Like, so that's something I talk about a lot. So like, for example, a mindset I share a lot about is obstacles. You know, people call obstacles or roadblocks, but I call them hurdles because you can see through them. You can see the finish line, but you don't have to follow everybody's. You don't. And if you use it, Dan, you better tell me you put it in your. By the way, FYI, I saw your newsletter with some of the stuff I said. I'm like, Dan, you should actually say that.
Wait, what?
Students
What part?
inspired me. The photography thing and the jack of all trades thing. I was like,
Oh, I got that from that was a Medium article
oh, but I
where
had been just talking about it the week before in our session, so I was like,
uh
oh, definitely inspired. But I talk about hurdles, and so you can see through them. You can see the finish line, but you don't have to follow the rules. We're not actually playing for ribbons here. Or for medals.
right.
I'm like, you can go under it, you can push it over, you can go around it. I'm like, you don't have to jump over the thing and stay in your lane. You can, you know. And so when I'm like, whenever I come across something that's in the way, I see it as a hurdle. But I was also a professional track runner in high school for a while, or competitive track runner, so I know, like, I use these analogies, and so like that's something I teach people, these mindsets. They're like, how can you just like think you can do anything? And I'm like, well, I see things in hurdles, I don't see them as obstacles. You know, there's a way through it. Always, it's going to take a little bit of friction, but that's not that big of a deal. So that's like an example. So I do teach mindsets or ways of thinking, and that's something that comes back a lot. Like, Santa's had me on her show a few times, and she always says that I help her change the way she thinks and helps her do, I don't know how to say what she says, but anyway,
Yeah.
so I don't know how to say that in a thing, but I don't really tweet about that very well. That's the problem. I speak about it, but I don't tweet about it. So, you know, Success Minded, who's got like 500,000 followers, he messages me, and like he comes to lots of my spaces, and he's like, I fell in love with you speaking, that's why I followed you, but your tweets definitely aren't the reason why I followed you. I was like, I don't know how to match them up. Like, how do you marry those two?
Yeah. I don't know. That's the thing, is like I've always been good on I've been good at writing like heavy hitting tweets, but then when it comes time to speak, like I just riff on them, which is like I guess it's playing to the strengths of each medium, where it's
Right.
like I'm good at going on a rant, and like if I screw up, I'm good at playing it off. But in terms of a tweet, it's like I have time to just write out one thought that was on my head and like switch one word because I know it'll hit harder.
Right. Okay, well, I know you guys want to get going. If you think of another way to say that, I like the last one, the future belongs to polymaths. I help you learn more faster. Yeah, so some of what I do is just think different. I don't know how to say that. Think differently to get like, yeah, reframing is the reframing, I think. That's what I do. I help people reframe things.
Hmm. I'll think about it. I'll munch on it. I have my best ideas in the gym, so when I'm in the gym in a few minutes, it'll come
Yeah.
to me during a set of squats.
Well, like, I'm like, most of the things that people get the most value for are my analogies. So, you know,
They're so powerful. Like metaphors, analogies, like in the newsletter, I'm starting to make the second section. It's like I'll do like an introduction or like a personal experience, and then it's like I set the scene with a concept or a metaphor. Like in the this Saturday's, um, talking about the new education system, which is like my metaphor for the creator economy, where like it's decentralized and people are putting out free information and all of this other stuff, and it just helps you explain things so much better.
okay. Yeah, like those are the ones that, yeah, people message me back and go, I'm still 2 months later thinking about that lesson you gave, and it was like an analogy I used. So like I use
Yeah.
apple trees, well, because I have a farm, but I have apple trees in the yard, so I'll talk about like pruning and how, you know, there's suckers at the bottom, and some people are like, the suckers, you just got to get rid of them right away.
Yeah.
because it's not good for the tree. I talk about the value of the fruit, so I give these analogies, and that's the stuff that people really love. Or think of yourself as one-sided and two-sided tape. So when you're like, this would actually work good for relationships. When people have this negative energy, or they're trying to push their energy or their stuff on you, I just think of myself as one-sided tape. It slides off of me. But when we're sensitive and hurting, we're double-sided tape, and things stick to us. So I mentally, like, I teach that, and people are like, holy crap. I like wrote up a thread one time about it because I was talking about it, and everyone kept on asking me, what was that analogy again? I love that. It's literally, think of yourself as one-sided tape. And I do that when people are super negative and their negative energies next to me. I'm like, okay, I'm one-sided tape. It's just going to slide right off. And I just like, don't let it penetrate. So just a quick little reframe, essentially.
I like that.
I think that's because that like analogies and metaphors are something that we like and have a lot to do with storytelling. And with storytelling, you're picturing that, and the same with metaphors and analogies.
Yeah, and it's sticky. People remember that, right? So,
yeah, that's true. Because you imagine it. That's the thing. You imagine, just see the picture in your head, and like, okay, and that stays with you.
Like my tree analogy the other day in my masterclass, we were talking about energy hacks. And I use my tree analogy again. And I came up with a new one because, like, apple trees, I don't know if you know this, but apple trees are usually grafted on another type of flower, another type of tree. So like a flowering crab, which doesn't produce like edible fruit. That's usually the root of the tree because it's very prolific. And then you add the apple tree, you graft it on. So I was saying it's sort of like mentorship. You've got this established tree. It's not exactly the same as you, and you graft onto it, and then actually you're fruit producing 4 years earlier because of it. So like I can use these analogies, and then people are like, oh, and a life thing with this, and they're like, that's why mentorship works really well, for example.
Yeah, those are good.
Yeah,
you need to just do a service where it's like, I'll help you come up with analogies.
Well, you know what? That actually, I do that. You know what? That probably is good because I help people all the time. I'm like, what are you trying to do? And then they'll tell me, and I'm like, oh, you're doing this. So like when I was doing taxes, I had, this was like 20 years ago when computers were like super slow, and accounting software is really heavy, like requires a lot of RAM, but those are more expensive. And so anyway, this one farmer, I couldn't convince him to buy this new computer, but he was having trouble all the time, and I didn't want to do his bookkeeping. I would train them, but not do their bookkeeping. I would set them up and let them do it because I don't like needy clients who need me all the time. But anyway, that's just me. So this is the analogy I gave him. I knew he was a farmer. So I said, look, if you have a really heavy load of grain, what kind of truck are you going to pull it with? I'm like, a half ton, a 3/4 ton, a 1 ton. Like, and he's like, oh, well, obviously, I'm going to use a 1 ton dually, or he understood the analogy. And I'm like, well, computers are like that. That accounting software is a really heavy load. You need a computer with a lot of RAM, sort of like your engine capacity, to pull that accounting software so it doesn't lock up all the time. It's too heavy for it. So you need a computer that's going to handle the load, just like your truck. Boom. He got it 2 seconds flat, went out and bought the new computer, no problem after that. So like that's nice. All I did was give him an analogy.
Yeah.
That he understood. So yeah, Joey, is that what you're saying? Yeah, Joey, you need to hire me for analogies. Is that what you're saying? I charge $200 for your branding analogy.
I love it.
Anyway, all right, thanks guys.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thank you
Good
very
last
much,
call.
guys.
I know it's only 2 of you right now, but I truly appreciate you guys. And
you take
you have access. This isn't goodbye.
Just take the last part of the recording off, by the way, just like short it down.
I mean, this is the last call up until the next cohort, so
yeah.
You'll see us again.
Do you mind if I take a screenshot? If you guys like, this is just something I do for journaling.
Yeah.
Oscar knows when him and I have a call, I always take a screenshot. Sweet. Thanks, guys.
Yes.
Yeah. So, awesome. We'll keep talking in the Discord, and I'll see you guys for the next call. I was gonna ask if we could have like a follow up in 2 months, but with the next calls, that's gonna be the same.
Yeah.
Just to ask different questions.
Okay, I gotta go, you guys. See you later.
Thank you. Take care, guys. Yeah, you too.
You too.
Good luck with the move, Joey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.